What if I told you that happiness in a relationship doesn't come from who you're with, but from who you are when you're with them? Too many of us spend years, decades, chasing the right person, hoping that when we finally find them, everything will fall into place. But the truth is more sobering and more empowering. The secret of a happy relationship is not about finding someone who completes you. It's about discovering the version of yourself that no longer needs to be completed. Let's talk about that. Because if you've ever found yourself feeling alone in a relationship, if you've ever questioned why love seems so hard or why things keep falling apart just when they feel promising, this conversation is for you. This is about finally understanding what makes love last, what brings joy instead of stress, and what turns connection into home. Let's dive into the 6 secrets of a truly happy relationship. So many people walk into relationships with a deep ache in their chest, hoping, sometimes praying, that the right person will finally fill that emptiness, that someone else will swoop in and make them feel loved, wanted, safe. And maybe, for a moment, it even feels like it's working. You meet someone, they give you attention, they say the right things, they fill your days with excitement, and for a while it feels like happiness. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the cracks begin to show. The things that made you feel alive start to feel unreliable. The attention fades, the effort dips, and suddenly you're left chasing a feeling that was never sustainable in the first place. Not because you're broken, but because you were looking for happiness in someone else's hands. And here's the part no one likes to hear. Your happiness is not your partner's responsibility. And when we hand someone that job, we create a dynamic that's doomed to fail. Because here's what happens. When someone becomes the sole source of your validation, of your emotional stability, of your sense of worth, they stop being a partner, and they start being a lifeline. But no one can breathe for 2 people. No one can hold themselves up and carry the entire emotional weight of another person without it breaking them, or the relationship. The healthiest relationships are not 2 halves finding their missing piece. They are 2 whole people already grounded in their own value, showing up with joy to share, not to extract. Happiness in a relationship is a reflection. It mirrors who you are and how you feel about yourself. If you're anxious, insecure, unsure of your worth, those emotions won't vanish when you're with someone. They will echo louder. Because relationships magnify our internal world. They bring it to the surface. And that can be uncomfortable, even painful, if we haven't learned to meet our own needs first. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present with yourself. Knowing how to sit with your discomfort. Knowing how to soothe your own wounds. Knowing how to create meaning and joy in your life even when you're alone. That's not independence. That's emotional maturity. And when you bring that version of yourself into a relationship, you stop demanding happiness, you start co-creating it. You stop needing someone to rescue you, and instead you invite someone to join you. And that's where the magic happens. And maybe you're thinking, but I've tried that. I've done the work. I've been kind, giving, supportive, and it still wasn't enough. And here's the hard truth. Sometimes, it's not about you. Sometimes, you're simply asking for the right things from the wrong person. You've been told you're too intense, too emotional, too high maintenance. But let me ask you this, by whose standard? Who decided that wanting clarity, consistency, or respect made you too much? One of the most damaging beliefs we carry is the idea that our emotional needs are a burden. That asking for someone to show up, to commit, to communicate honestly is unreasonable. But it's not. It's not too much to want to feel safe in love. It's not too much to want emotional intimacy, not just physical connection. It's not too much to want to be prioritized, to be cherished, to be treated like you matter. The problem is not that you're asking for too much. The problem is that you've been offering your love to people who were never emotionally equipped to meet you there. There are people in this world who thrive on ambiguity, who avoid accountability, who make you feel like you're chasing them just to get the bare minimum. And over time, that erodes your self-worth. You start internalizing their inability to love you as proof that you're unlovable. But it's not the truth. It's just the result of being in a dynamic that was always lopsided. If you've ever felt like you were begging for scraps of affection, if you've ever stayed up at night trying to decode a text, justify a broken promise, or silence your own needs just to keep the peace, that's not love. That's emotional survival. And you deserve better than that. You deserve a love that doesn't make you question your value. A connection that doesn't feel like a test. A relationship where being yourself isn't risky. It's welcomed. But to get there, you have to stop negotiating with people who don't see your worth. You have to stop lowering your voice just to be heard. You have to stop shrinking yourself just to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. Because your needs aren't inconvenient. Your emotions aren't liabilities. And your standards aren't flaws, they're boundaries born from wisdom. The moment you stop asking the wrong people to give you the right things is the moment everything changes. Because now you're not begging, you're choosing. You're not proving, you're aligning. And when you stand in that place, when you finally believe that your love is a gift and not a favor, the right kind of love doesn't feel hard. Feels like home. We're conditioned to believe that chemistry is everything. That butterflies in your stomach, late-night obsession, the electric tension. That's what love is supposed to feel like. And if it doesn't, then maybe it's not real. But let me ask you something. What if everything you've been taught to chase in love is the very thing sabotaging your peace? What if the fireworks you keep looking for are actually explosions that leave you burned out, confused, and insecure? Real connection isn't built on adrenaline. It's built on trust, on consistency, on emotional safety. That might not sound as exciting as wild passion and endless drama, but let me tell you, emotional safety is the thing that allows love to grow. It's what gives your heart the space to open without fear. It's what makes you breathe easy when you're with someone, instead of holding your breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. When someone creates emotional safety, you don't have to guess how they feel. You don't have to decode mixed signals. You don't have to play games to get their attention. You feel safe. You feel seen. You feel heard. And that feeling, that's the foundation of everything beautiful in a relationship. Because when you feel safe, you can be vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, true intimacy begins. But when emotional safety is missing, we operate from fear. We walk on eggshells. We second-guess ourselves. We start molding who we are just to avoid setting someone off. We learn to shrink, to silence our truth, to question whether our needs are too much. And slowly we lose ourselves piece by piece, all in the name of love that never really loved us back. When you've experienced emotional safety, you will never want anything less again. Because it's not about perfection. It's about presence. Someone who listens to understand, not to reply. Someone who checks in, not out, when things get hard. Someone who doesn't weaponize your vulnerability or disappear when it's no longer convenient. That kind of presence creates a space where you can be fully you, messy, emotional, strong, unsure, and still feel worthy of love. And yet, so many of us stay in relationships that feel like emotional landmines. Not because we enjoy the chaos, but because we've normalized it. We've equated drama with depth. We think that if it's not intense, it must not be meaningful. But intensity is not the same as intimacy. One is rooted in fear and control, the other in trust and openness. You have to decide which one you're building your life on. And when things do go wrong, and they will, because no relationship is perfect, the way you handle conflict is what reveals the strength of your connection. It's not about whether or not you argue. It's about how you repair, how you show up in the moments that feel most raw, most uncomfortable, most vulnerable. That's where the truth of the relationship lives. A lot of people think a good relationship is one where you never fight. But that's not realistic. The couples who avoid conflict entirely aren't avoiding issues, they're avoiding growth. Because every time you bury your feelings to keep the peace, you trade authenticity for silence. And over time, silence becomes distance. Resentment grows in those unspoken places. You start feeling lonely, even with someone sitting right next to you. But when you're with someone who's emotionally available, someone who values communication over ego, arguments become opportunities. They become moments where both people get to understand each other more deeply. It's not about winning. It's not about being right. It's about being real. Real about your feelings. Real about your fears. Real about your desire to keep choosing each other, even when things feel tough. Avoidance, on the other hand, creates decay. When you avoid the hard conversations, what you're really doing is avoiding truth. And truth always finds a way to surface, often in the form of disconnection, passive aggression, emotional withdrawal. And once that pattern sets in, it becomes harder and harder to find your way back to each other. You deserve to be with someone who's not afraid of your feelings. Someone who doesn't flinch when you say, "Hey, I need to talk about something that's bothering me." Someone who sees conflict as a doorway to deeper understanding, not as a threat to their control. When you find that, you realize that love isn't supposed to feel like you're constantly auditioning. It's supposed to feel like a partnership where both people are willing to get uncomfortable for the sake of closeness. And yes, that takes maturity. It takes emotional intelligence. It takes people who are willing to be self-aware, willing to be accountable, willing to grow. But when two people bring that kind of presence to each other, the relationship stops being a battlefield and starts becoming a sanctuary. A place where hard conversations don't tear you apart. They bring you closer. A place where you don't have to hide, because love doesn't live in performance. It lives in truth. Ask ChatGPT. So many of us grew up believing that love is something we have to earn. That if we just look right, say the right things, avoid making too many waves, we'll finally be good enough to keep someone. We're taught to believe that being lovable means being flawless. But that belief is one of the biggest barriers to real connection. Because when you're busy trying to be perfect, you're not being real. You're performing, not relating. And people can't fall in love with the version of you that hides behind a mask. They can only connect with the you that shows up, flawed, raw, authentic, and honest. The truth is, connection isn't found in perfection. It's found in the messy moments. The ones where you admit you don't have it all figured out. The ones where you say, "I'm scared, but I'm still here." The ones where you let someone see the parts of you you've spent a lifetime trying to fix or hide. And when you meet someone who doesn't flinch at those parts, who leans in rather than pulling away, that's when you realize what it really means to be seen. There's this belief that if we expose our insecurities, our doubts, our fears, we'll scare people off. That will be too much. But what actually scares people off is emotional distance. The kind that happens when you're smiling on the outside but quietly screaming inside. The kind of distance that grows when you say, "I'm fine," because you're afraid if you told the truth, it might cost you the relationship. But here's the paradox. The more you try to hold on by pretending, the more you lose the very intimacy you're trying to protect. It's the little moments of truth that build the strongest foundation. Saying, "That really hurt me," or "I don't need you to fix this, I just need you to hear me," or even just, "I feel like I'm not enough sometimes." These are not signs of weakness. They are invitations. Invitations for someone to see the full picture of who you are and love you more, not less, because of it. But you have to be brave enough to let go of the image. The one that says you have it all together. The one that keeps you constantly on edge, trying to control how you're perceived. Because the right person doesn't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be present, to be emotionally available, to be honest. And when you start leading with that, you begin to attract the kind of connection that doesn't fizzle out when things get real. It deepens. And that leads to something most people overlook. Love isn't a feeling you fall into. It's a decision you keep making every day, especially when it's hard. We have this fantasy that a good relationship is just supposed to work effortlessly, that if it takes effort, it must not be right. But that mindset is exactly what causes so many relationships to fail. A healthy relationship isn't built in the honeymoon phase. It's built in the day-to-day, in the decisions you make when no one is watching, in the way you speak to each other after a long, draining day, in how you show up when life is messy and unpredictable. It's built in the repeated act of choosing the relationship, not because it's easy, but because it matters. The happiest couples you know aren't happy because they never hit rough patches. They're happy because they didn't let those patches define them. They didn't give up at the first sign of difficulty. They didn't fall into the trap of thinking love is just a feeling you're supposed to chase. They understood that love is work, but not the exhausting kind where you lose yourself. It's the kind where both people show up and invest in something bigger than themselves. Think about it like this. Every relationship has a garden, and every day you have a choice. You can either water it or you can ignore it. Some days it will bloom easily. Other days it will feel like nothing is growing. But the people who stay in love are the ones who keep watering, who keep nurturing, who understand that even when the feelings fluctuate, the commitment doesn't. That doesn't mean tolerating toxicity. It doesn't mean staying when you're the only one trying. But it does mean being willing to stay in the room when things are uncomfortable. It means choosing compassion over criticism. It means having conversations instead of keeping score. And most importantly, it means reminding yourself that love is not a one-time promise. It's a daily practice. So when you ask yourself what a happy relationship looks like, don't just think about the spark. Think about the stability. Think about the presence. Think about the daily decisions that either build trust or erode it. The way you both fight. The way you both listen. The way you both repair. That's what determines whether a relationship thrives or just survives. Love doesn't sustain itself, but it rewards those who nurture it, who respect it, who treat it as something sacred, not disposable. Because when both people commit to showing up, not just in the beginning but over and over again, that's when a relationship stops being just a chapter in your life story and becomes a home. Ask ChatGPT. If this resonated with you, even just one point, take a moment to reflect on where you are in your relationships today. Are you showing up as the person you want to be with? Are you giving to yourself what you keep hoping someone else will? Because the truth is, the quality of our relationships mirrors the quality of our relationship with ourselves. So I want to hear from you. What stood out the most in this message? What's something you're going to change? Or finally give yourself permission to believe? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If this speech moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like the video, subscribe for more empowering conversations like this, and let me know what topics you want us to explore next. You deserve love that feels like home, and that journey starts right now with you.